Hi, welcome to the next webcast, or in this case the video link. We're going to try something a little bit different this time round. Previously most of our presentations have been in audio, which has been fine, and that was what was selected, that medium originally in our pilot program, mainly so we could get to fairly remote and regional services and we wouldn't get bogged down, say, in internet connections and so forth. The audio was coming through quite successfully. I thought that if the video worked and we broke it down into a few smaller segments, that way it could still be passed on and you wouldn't have any impact, I guess, on playing it depending on the size of your system. So today we want to look at the quality improvement plan. I want to spend about 15 minutes if I can in explaining in the best way possible how to approach this, what we use, and what's been highly successful today. So on my own agenda, a few points before we actually have a look at the quality improvement planning workbook that we use, and one of those, the areas in the new way or new approach to the assessment and rating system, is that we've got to prove that we've got a depth of knowledge throughout the team, which means this time round we're not just going to have the director chaperoning an authorised officer who would be looking at our centre during, say, a spot visit. They could very well be talking to one of our room leaders or one of our casuals on a certain subject and be asking questions of them to gauge what they know of the procedures that we use, maybe to support certain outcomes and certain procedures, I guess, to enhance those outcomes. So the power of participation is something I want to get across before we look at this too deeply. It is what will create an understanding right through your team. And participation really is done by making sure that everybody gets exposed to certain things within the national quality standards, certain systems or routines that exist within them. This particular one is it's almost like a key routine. As we'll explain later, we call these critical essential routines. And we've got to make sure that everybody understands it, but it's such a busy day. And so you can only do this with an approach that is systematic. And we all have either weekly or fortnightly or monthly meetings, and this is where it can bind a routine to manage the quality improvement planning process. Now, something else we've got to be mindful of before we actually look at this process is that our first requirements are approaching. There's been some circulars, documentation going out at the moment that's informing us that within the first 4 months of next year will be some centres, some services around the country, depending on the timing of their normal accreditation process, will be needing to have a look at their quality improvement plan and getting it ready for submission. There's no perfect time than now to start looking at what you're doing, getting a routine in place and starting to record this information rather than having a flurry of activity, some weeks prior to having to get it submitted. So going back over those two important points before we look at the plan itself is that, remember, participation is going to be the key, or the organic approach to making sure that you have a depth of knowledge throughout your team. And this is our first requirement, and it is an undercurrent, it is a philosophy of the framework and the standards. It may not say that within each of those documents, but it exists. If you have a close look at it and you begin to understand it, you'll see continuous improvement runs through everything. Now, point 3 on my agenda is to try and help you with the definition of a critical essential routine. In a lot of cases, your service only needs 5, 6 or 7 routines which will manage the entire business. In traditional business, it'll have to do with promotions, it'll have to do with operations, more commercial aspects, risk management and so forth, and services themselves. This is all made to measure for us now with the quality areas. We have 7 of them, and the aim of the Childcare Centre Desktop is to provide 7 critical essential routines to govern all of those areas. In this case, we could say that the quality improvement planning process is the routine that umbrellas everything, and that's the way I'd like to look at it. So three questions that I needed to ask when looking at this particular process is, what's the routine that supports answers to reflective questions? So what's going to encourage that kind of participation and that kind of questioning and that reflection back on the outcomes within the framework and our standards and elements? What's the routine to promote and manage continuous improvement? What is it that you already do that brings people together in a forum where you can have a look at this and make decisions? It's going to be a weekly, fortnightly or monthly meeting. And what's a routine that will support a depth of understanding throughout the entire team? And of course it does start and end with the communication within these meetings and the ability of someone to be a champion of this information. So it is really important. Again, I'll recap. We have the power of participation with the quality improvement planning process or routine. It is a requirement we must follow. These are facts. We can't get away from it. We've got to do this, and I'm trying to supply it to you in the easiest way we can. And the undercurrent to the national quality standards and to the framework is continuous improvement. We actually adopt a 5-step routine to manage the quality improvement planning process. We identify the issues for continuous improvement. We look at the actions to be taken. We look at who is going to be responsible for these actions within the group or in the team. When these steps are going to be completed, so we schedule them. This is all happening in this particular meeting. And then we make an evaluation and a next move. The next move being, do we continue or do we complete? So what you'll see now coming up on the video is a diagram which describes the process a little bit more clearly. Now you can print this off, and I did encourage you in your email to make sure that you had it in front of you, because it may not be very clear on this video itself. But if you have a look at the top box and look at the area of issue, and we run around this diagram, we're looking at questions of each. So just imagine we've come into our fortnightly or monthly meeting, we've come up to the agenda item, which is the quality improvement plan. And within this document we have these 5 steps taking place, and I'll show you what the document looks like in a minute. On every given page of the plan itself, we have the area of issue, strategies, by who, by when, next moves, and these are the questions that we will ask ourselves. Now, what is a related national quality standard or element? We make sure that goes in there, and we make sure that that's broadcast to the team so they can see what where this issue relates. What is the issue itself being submitted for improvement? So obviously something has come up in the course of our day or our week, or through a spot check, whatever it may be, that is being submitted into the quality improvement plan. From there, now you can see the little people that I have, little groups above the box called strategies. That just represents the key mechanism that we're using, and this is the place where we share information, and this is the place where we're going to get a depth of knowledge throughout the team. So this really has to be thought out and discussed at the meetings with others present. So with the strategies, how shall we solve, change, improve or remove the issue? Will several steps be required to get the result we want? If we're discussing this as a team, they're going to begin to absorb it and understand it. Now at this same time, we're going to be looking as who is best equipped or best qualified to take care of this particular issue. So who will be responsible for seeing this issue through to its successful resolution? Are there any specific instructions required? And that's documented on our page. And the obvious thing is to give it some accountability. We don't want this to be in the quality improvement plan in 6 months' time. We want to be able to act on it. So how long should this take? What could hold us up? What dates are to be set? And get them in there. And once again we come up to next moves, where we see the little crowd of people again. Now the reason I've done it on these 2 areas is because we could be addressing in any given meeting the evaluation of a previous issue or the submission of a new one. So we're doing this in the same meeting. We're sort of covering 2 areas. So this is just this organic approach to completing the process. So in our next moves we have issues that have been dealt with, we've brought them back to the table and we have an evaluation on this issue. What's going to be done next? What is our next move? Do we need to continue to complete the process and gain completion on the issue so it's fixed, or is it completed at this point in time and signed off? So how does all this look on paper? We have created a quality improvement plan. It's more like a quality improvement workbook, and it follows that exact process within the diagram itself. Any given page, if I jump to, I have an example here which I'll talk you through in a little while. Quality Area 3, Physical Environment. So we've got the issue that needs to be documented. Previously, of course, I've jumped one, but in actual fact we want to put the standard and the element in first. And that's purely making sure that we take this information and document it in front of others. It's really a training program or a training process. Every time we do this, we want to raise the quality area and raise the elements, so we're slowly drip feeding an understanding of the national quality standards throughout the team. Because when the authorised officer comes in and wants to talk to us, they may very well walk into the centre and bypass authorised supervisors or directors at given points and want to speak to a room leader, and we want them to have an understanding, just as we do, of what the procedure is to support completing the issue, if you like, or supporting the outcomes within the National Quality Framework itself. The strategies we discussed, we have an area for 3 strategies. Sometimes it may take more, but 9 times out of 10 no. And an area where we're actually providing the accountability for this issue itself. So the time frame and responsibility, it's by who and by when, just as it is documented in the diagram. And of course we have an area which is for summary and completion, and it's signed off and dated. So this particular workbook has all 7 quality areas, or let's say areas where you can address issues within all of the quality areas. The way we've used it is that we're on, we could be on book 2 or book 3 now, and it's just archived for us when the time comes to complete our actual or formal quality improvement plan in preparation for our assessment and rating.